Hello and welcome to Friday Live. I'm your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer. This is Friday afternoon, so that means we are heading out live to the Your Strata Property Facebook page. Some of you might be tuning in via LinkedIn. You might be catching us on YouTube. Happiest of happy Fridays in Strata to you. What have you been up to this week? I have been mostly confined to this room. Not a lot of outside time. I often get to the end of the day and my husband says to me, "Did you touch grass today?" And too often the answer is no. No, I don't. This has been one of those weeks. A few tribunal proceedings going on that I'm involved in, head down preparing affidavits and applications and long letters. That is the life of a strata lawyer. So it's lovely to be here with you, being able to spend some time on a Friday afternoon, catching up, checking in, having a look at some news stories that have been out there about strata recently, and chatting to you about some of my favorite issues, conundrums, challenges in strata, with the hope that I might be able to arm you with some answers, arm you with some knowledge, some guidance to help you improve your experience of strata living as well. Great to have you here with me, those of you who are coming in live. Stephanie is here saying hi. Hey, Stephanie, how you doing? Thank you for joining us here. Cheryl is here, bringing with her my bunches of flowers. Hello, Cheryl. How you doing? Patrina is here saying hi. Great to have you with us, Patrina. If you are coming in live, feel free to drop me a hello here in the comments. If you're catching the replay, as so many of you do, I always see your hellos and would love to have them here in our comments. This week, you may have noticed there was a little bit of celebration going on at YSP headquarters, and that is because we ticked over 200,000 downloads of the podcast. Since we started the podcast back in 2016, we've published 384 episodes. We have had quite a bit more than now. It's really ticked over, more than 200,000 downloads of the podcast. And if you received my email celebrating that this week, you would have seen that downloads measure essentially the popularity of a podcast, the longevity of a podcast. And once we're up to that many downloads, we are in the top 5% of podcasts that are out there in the world, which I think is pretty good for a tiny tot podcast on a very, very niche area, going out to a sparsely populated continent where we're really only aimed at a small proportion of the population. But you are listening, you are out there, you are tuning in, which makes me feel so, so good and inspires me to keep on delivering. So thank you to all of you who posted your congratulations and your thank yous and your well wishes here on the page. There were lots and lots more in my inbox. I get a lot of emails from you guys, and I can't respond to all of them. But please know that when you do email me saying that you've enjoyed some content, that you have liked a topic that I've covered, even when you are asking questions and suggesting topics, please know that those suggestions, those thanks are always recorded. They're always noted, even if I don't get the opportunity to reply to everybody. So I so appreciate your emails and your comments. Thank you for those. Megan is here saying hello on the road from Albany, WA. Awesome. Great to have you tuning in, Megan. And Olivia's jumping in and saying hi. Hi, Olivia. So that there's a short video on the Facebook page. It's also over on LinkedIn. I think, yes, it's on Instagram. It's on YouTube. It's in all the places that Rochelle, very helpfully, and I know she had some help from Mina as well, put together for us during the week, celebrating our 200,000 downloads. You can watch that video and essentially see the evolution of the podcast together with the evolution of my hairstyles. So I know as Rochelle was going through some of those old videos, She said to me, Amanda, some of this is a bit cringy. Some of it's a bit cringy. I don't think she meant the hairstyles. She wouldn't be so cruel as to say that. I think she meant our amateurish way in which we used to record and produce the podcast. I think we've gotten better over the years. I hope you think so too. But that's why I gave Rochelle the job of going through those old videos, because I really didn't want to look at them. Bridget is saying, I think the podcasts reflect that people are looking for solutions to strata and community living problems, and you cover such a wide range of topics. There is something for everybody. Yeah, thank you, Bridget. I'm often surprised. Indeed, I hear we have listeners all over Australia. Me as a New South Wales lawyer, I am often very focused, especially when I'm talking about the specifics and the technicalities and sections of the legislation, cases. I'm often talking about the law in New South Wales. But we definitely have listeners who are tuning in from all parts of Australia, including our strata managers who are serving communities. And they do find that what we talk about on the podcast is incredibly helpful because, as you say, Bridget, there is something for everybody, and we're all experiencing the same challenges, the same problems on that general high level look at strata and community living, even when we're not digging down into the technicalities of legislation. Hey, Jeff Hallam, good to see you here. Just checking. Oh yeah, Rochelle's just sending me a private note about the cringy early podcasts. Rochelle's telling me, and the lighting and the background, and it just wasn't her. Look, when I think things like that and see things like that, I think, what am I going to be doing in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? What am I going to be thinking about what's going on right here, what we're doing right here? There's always room for improvement. So thank you to all of you who have got us to 200,000 downloads. Let's whack another zero on that. Hey, let's do it. See how long that takes us. Okay. You're coming on in thick and fast. If you are here live and want to drop me a hello, then you are most welcome to. I always like to know that you are there tuning in. If you're catching the replay, give me a hello as well. In addition to our celebratory 200,000 episode video that was put onto the page this week, I think it was just last night, we posted an even shorter video that was a bit of a throwback to a chat that happened here on the page a couple of months ago. I think it was before I headed off overseas. And as you'll often see, these short videos, they are cut from previous Friday Live chats, snippets of information, some comments that I might have made about a case or a hot topic. And I find that you guys tell me by watching them, by liking them, that these are helpful to you. So the team is producing those. And the one that I posted last night contains some commentary, let's say, about the difficulties that I see and I hear you as strata owners have when it comes to getting legal representation. And in that short video, I talked about the commercial conflict of interest that is sometimes identified by strata lawyers who are asked by you, lot owners, to act for them, to give them advice that is in opposition to an owners corporation. And where that owners corporation is represented by a strata manager, and a particular strata lawyer gets a lot of work through that strata manager, what I hear from strata owners is that they can't get those lawyers to act for them. The lawyer will say, I've got a conflict of interest. And it's not, when you drill down, it's not a conflict of interest in having worked for the building before. It's a conflict of interest once the lawyer realizes which strata manager is involved. And as lawyers, we kind of can predict how certain cases run. We know we're going to be sending potentially some assertive letters off to an owners corporation, care of a strata manager. And some lawyers don't want to get involved in that kind of correspondence, acting for a lot owner against an owners corporation. where that owner's corporation has a certain strata manager in place. So the snapshot of that conversation is here on the page, and I can already tell by the views that are on that video and by those who are ticking that like button on the video that has resonated with you. It's something that I come back to because when I put this stuff out here, I do that because I've heard from you that this is your experience on the ground. So if that is something that you are continuing to experience as an owner, I know, as I said in the video, I have owners come to me and say, Amanda, I spoke to this lawyer, I spoke to that lawyer, and they weren't able to act for me because they didn't want to get embroiled in this dispute involving these strata managers. Please do. Tell me these things. I sit on the council of the Australian College of Strata Lawyers. We have an interest in keeping our eyes open about these things where they may be happening. And this is a place where important conversations start here on these platforms, me hearing from you, sharing my thoughts. I think at the end of the day, with this issue, when it comes to indeed genuine legal conflicts of interest, they do crop up in Strata because we are a small bunch. We are a small crew. Strata lawyers, you can count us on maybe, I used to say one, maybe a couple of hands now in New South Wales at least. Real live Strata lawyers who are dedicated to acting in strata and community title cases only, where 100% of our work is dedicated to that practice. There are not many of us out there. So it's not unusual, I know, for owners to approach lawyers, for buildings to approach lawyers, and for those lawyers to say, I have a conflict of interest. I've already acted for the other party in this case. I'm often approached by an opponent where I've already been engaged by an owner, and then the building might contact me or a neighbor might contact me saying, Amanda, can you act for me? And I have a conflict. And I think it just comes down to those types of conflicts come down to there not being enough strata lawyers, specialist strata lawyers out there, probably right across the country. So if anyone, I know I have a lot of lawyers who tune in. There's a few lawyers who popped into my inbox this week and said, congratulations on the 200,000 downloads. I know there are many lawyers who tune in, both strata lawyers and otherwise. If there are young people in your practice, if there are young people in your family who might be studying law, if you are thinking about this might be a career path for you, then I really do encourage you to look further into the practice of strata law. I said in my email as well today that it is a fascinating practice. We are looking at the way in which human beings think, act, the interesting, weird, wild, wonderful things that humans do. I think the practice of a lawyer is very much an investigation into human behavior, never more so than when you are a strata lawyer. So it's something that I managed to stumble my way into when I was a young person and certainly have never looked back. So we need more strata lawyers. The Australian College of Strata Lawyers is always on the lookout for new members, young people, associates of legal firms who are dabbling in strata law, who want to make connections with other professionals who are at the top of their game in strata law. Then the Australian College of Strata Lawyers is definitely a place to be checking out. A few more hellos coming on in. Zlata, I know you've had some difficulties with your strata lawyers. I see your comment there. I acknowledge that. Steve is saying, hi, Amanda, always relevant and valuable sessions that address the elephant in the room, but that a lot of us are dealing with. Keep up the great service and onwards to that extra zero. Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that. You know, it's not gonna, I was looking at the stats. I'm not kidding. It's not going to take long to get to that extra zero. The way the podcast works, you know, the more you put out there, then the more listeners that you have, and the more downloads that you have. So we've really ramped up in the last couple of years with those numbers. So exciting times ahead. And I'll keep calling out the elephant in the room. It's what I like to do. And you guys tell me. You're often the ones who are telling me what this elephant is. And I'm happy to keep talking about it. Now, a couple of weeks ago, here on live, I think it was our last live 2 weeks ago, I was talking about tenants and compensation claims, effective, successful compensation claims that tenants in New South Wales had made against their strata landlords because of wet, moldy apartments, conditions that tenants were living in. The tribunal in the residential tenancy list had awarded, in a couple of cases, essentially decided within the same week, awarded significant sums of compensation to tenants who were impacted in their homes. Landlords had said, not our fault. We're waiting for an owners corporation to do something. They're dragging their feet. And the tribunal said, we don't care. You have an obligation as a landlord to be providing safe, healthy, dry places for your tenants to live. Now, fascinatingly, another fascinating thing about the world that we live in these days, there has been a high court case where there has been a ruling about tenants. And I'm just finding my screen here. I think I've got it, and that I can share with you this article. Here we go. Link for this one in the comments for you if you're interested. But it caught my eye because we were only just talking about this a couple of weeks ago. I was saying I think there's real important. There are important findings in these cases that have a flow-on effect for landlords, indeed, and in our space for owners corporations. And lo and behold, we have a high court case, not to do with Strata. Don't don't get too excited. Not to do with Strata, but a win for a group of tenants. It's actually a remote community in the Northern Territory. They had a major legal win yesterday, is what's said in that article. And I think this article, yes, it's only this week, November 2, article written by Chris Martin, Senior Research Fellow at the City Futures Research Centre at UNSW. This article is in The Conversation. You can click through and have a read of it. People in the town of Santa Teresa, southeast of Alice Springs, have won the right to compensation for the substandard housing they're forced to live in. And guess who their landlord is? The Northern Territory government. So the NT government has to pay them for the distress and disappointment that they endured as a result. And you'll see in the headline here, no back door. One of the problems with the premises was one tenant had no back door for 5 years. And the High Court has found that there is a head of claim for these tenants under distress and disappointment. It was a long path to the legal victory, we are told here in this article. And it's predicted that the way in which the residential tenancy law, which in this case is specific to the Northern Territory, but the way in which that was interpreted by the High Court is going to have flow-on effects for other states, and the ability for tenants in other states to make similar claims against their landlord for compensation where they are not being provided with adequate housing. So this is kind of a tip of the iceberg issue, I think, that we were really talking about 2 weeks ago. We're now seeing a decision from the highest court in our country, the High Court of Australia, letting us know what the extent of tenants' rights are and their claims against their landlords. And this case, I imagine, is going to be wheeled out by tenants making similar claims to those that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, and really broadening that head of claim for tenants who are living in properties that are not fit for habitation or not to the standard that they need to be at. How is all of that relevant to Strata? Well, as I said a couple of weeks ago, where tenants are able to make these claims against landlords and do so successfully, the landlord, the owner, is then suffering a loss. They are suffering that loss because of, generally, an owners corporation's failure to repair and maintain the common property. And if you're in New South Wales, then as an owner, as a landlord, you can then claim that loss from your owners corporations. So we just see these cascading claims. The buck stops with the owners corporation potentially having to meet those compensation claims. So I thought I'd bring that one to your attention. We have the ability to predict the future here at YSP headquarters. That's pretty cool. I haven't got the link to the High Court case itself, but if you read that article in The Conversation, then I believe you can click through and have a read of that case. Your case law buffs that I know are here will want to go and check that one out. Sam is here with a smiley face. Hey, Sam, nice to see you. If you're coming in, feel free to drop me a hello indeed. Okay, so I've talked about the joy that we strata lawyers have, and I've tried to recruit you over to becoming a strata lawyer, the joy that we have in being able to dive into, surround ourselves with the eccentricities of humans, because I enjoy that so much that when I see stories in the news, when Rochelle and Mina fill out our media spreadsheet each week that I'm scrolling through and making sure that I'm on top of what's going on so I can bring it to you here on live. It is these human interest stories that jump out to me. And one in particular caught my eye this week. It is about frogs. It's about frogs. I'm going to find where I've saved it here for you and share it on the screen. We've got a link for you that is going into the comments. I don't know what I've done here. Press the wrong button. Alrighty. This story coming from France. Okay. It is literally about frogs. It's coming from France. I'm not saying anything. That's all I'm saying. Okay. These are the facts. I'm relaying the facts to you. A neighbor has called the police on a 92-year-old woman over noises coming from her pond. She says, "It's my entertainment." This is the pond. And I'm going to come back to that because when I saw that picture, it inspired the rest of today's subject matter. A French woman has accidentally annoyed her neighbors with her garden pond, and it's not even her fault. Unexpected amphibian visitors are to blame. The Guardian's reporting that 92-year-old Colette Ferry, a resident of the tiny French village Frontenay, where's my French speakers? If I pronounced that correctly, received a visit from local law enforcement after they received complaints from neighbors about noisy frogs in her yard. They're not her pets, so she doesn't have control over the matter. She said, "They're in and out of the water. They're playing with my fish. It's my entertainment. A man came here. He was yelling at me. He said he couldn't sleep. He had to work, but I didn't expect the police, especially not for frogs. There's always someone ready to complain about someone else." Sounds familiar? The article goes on to say that in recent months, numerous homeowners have taken to Reddit to air their grievances about strict neighbors and homeowners associations, Strata, that stand in direct opposition to their property investment projects like vegetable gardens that help local ecosystems thrive and composting bins that help reduce wastefulness. French lawmakers recently passed legislation to keep the nation's countryside as natural as possible by protecting sensory heritage. That is the smells and sounds of local wildlife. That's interesting. Haven't heard about that before, but I was lucky enough a number of years ago, pre-pandemic, to spend a couple of weeks in the south of France in a country village. I was going to say country town, village, I think we call them in France. And I was fascinated that there wasn't a lot of bird life at all. It was weird. When you live in Australia and you're very used to hearing birds, there wasn't a lot of bird life. So it doesn't surprise me that there may be laws in France that are aimed at protecting their sensory heritage. I like that term. Living in the countryside implies accepting some nuisances, said the Minister for Rural Life. Ferry, who is the 92-year-old woman who's enjoying the sounds of her frogs, she said she's excited to see what happens next, as the French police assured her that someone will return to apprehend the frogs from her property. She said, "That'll be fun. They jump." There you go. Not expressly that we're hearing here living in a strata type development or a homeowners association, maybe, but the kind of dispute that you can certainly see arising in our own context. And what I wanted to put out to you is this question. Well, a couple of things. Noise coming from frogs, coming from wildlife, not coming from the resident or visitors to the resident, or arising in any way that the resident may have control over. What do you think would happen if there was a similar complaint in one of our strata communities. We have, at least in New South Wales, we have a model bylaw about noise that I think almost every community will have in place, that a resident must not do anything that may disturb the peaceful enjoyment of another. What if there were critters and creatures on the property? Might be a property that has a backyard, a courtyard, a terrace, uh, and there are animals that are coming and going. I don't think I don't think that that would be enough to prove that a resident was breaching the bylaws because of some animals that were making noises over which they didn't have any control. Different if it was their pets. I'm seeing a comment from Olivia, and this is where I'm going, Olivia. Olivia says we've just had a complaint about magpies in the morning, but more so the feeding of. Yes. So I have too had my fair share of cases relating to birds and bird feeding, and the question of whether or not the residents are breaching bylaws by feeding birds, whether or not the residents are disturbing the peaceful enjoyment of others by their actions in feeding birds. And I have been consulted by buildings who want to put in place bylaws that prevent owners from feeding birds and residents from feeding birds and dealing with local wildlife because of noise disease that may come from birds, and just the health hazard of feathers being dropped and common property being what's the word, dirtied. So while I don't think that a situation of noisy frogs deciding to enter a pond over which you may have no control would necessarily put our residents here under our Australian legal systems in any danger of bylaw breaches. I think if you were doing something like feeding birds, as you're saying, Olivia, you're saying that's caused a commotion. Yeah, indeed. Then there may be some responsibility placed on residents. The other place where this comes up is pests and vermin that are coming into a property. A question I've been asked before, I think this came up in our member forum, where there is pest control on the common property, and then we end up with pests inside units as well. The question of whether tenants or residents are doing anything to cause that vermin problem arises, and do they have any responsibility to be dealing with that issue? I've often said that it is the responsibility of the owners corporation to maintain the common property. So I believe that an owners corporation should be conducting their pest control on the common property as best they can. I think if there's something that's happening within a lot, if there is rubbish that's not being put out, or there is some other animal that's being kept in the lot that is causing then a pest control problem, then indeed having a conversation with that tenant, that resident, and being able to work out what it is that's going on is your first stop there. And to the extent that a resident is doing something that is affecting health and safety of others in the building, then that should certainly be addressed. But common property, pest control on the common property is definitely a responsibility for our owners corporations. When I first saw this article and I was scrolling down to look at the picture, I thought what I was going to read was an article about this pond that looks beautiful, looks like a lot of effort's been spent there. I think there's fish in there, we read in the article, that the frogs are coming to visit. And I was thinking about cases, again, that I have encountered in my career where owners have set up ponds like this, structures in their backyard, structures on common property, decks, pergolas, whatever it is that they may feel helps them to better enjoy their property, only to discover, you live in Strata, that is not allowed. I'm going to stop sharing this one and lead you through a case a case about a skate ramp. We're going from frogs in a pond to skate ramps on common property. Before I do that, I see Bill and Ben coming on in saying, we had an owner post on a Facebook group, third day in a row, koalas now vocalizing at dawn. Noise issue, question mark. Well, where are the koalas? They're on the common property. I think I'd know a little bit of background about where you are, Bill and Ben. So koalas on the common property, but whose fault? Who are we blaming for this? This is exactly the case with the frogs in the pond. They decide to come make noise. Nobody's fault. Nobody enticing. I don't know how you entice a koala with cuddles. Nobody enticing. No laws being breached. I imagine it's called living in a beautiful part of the world where you can have frogs, French frogs at that, and Australian koalas. Yeah, Patrina's saying, Bill and Ben, how lucky they are to have koalas. Sounds like Bill and Ted having an excellent adventure. Hey, John, I see you there. Welcome. All right, skate ramps, frog ponds to skate ramps. I have a case for you. I'm not going to share my screen with you, but Rochelle and Mina have a link to pop into the comments for you here. Have you heard about the case of Lewinson? Strata Plan 31293 and Lewinson. And this case came to mind when I was looking at that photograph of that pond and thinking about the unusual, creative things that strata owners may do when they are looking to stake a claim on their space. This is a case where an owner resident built a skate ramp in a common property courtyard. Now, this happened during COVID lockdown. The owner had his 2 young children staying with him and was looking for ways to keep them and perhaps himself entertained. His name is Mr. Lewinson. He built this skate ramp, and in doing so, ultimately, the case, of course, comes before the tribunal. He tells the tribunal that he was improving the amenity for everyone who occupied the building. He said the rear courtyard was a mess, and he both installed a skate ramp, but he also did a lot of great landscaping. I think he built a deck. He had some experience as a landscaper, had some qualifications. And he says to the tribunal that he's completely improved the area. He's tidied it up. He's made it useful. And he was quite surprised that other owners would not be grateful, would not be happy about that. He put his hand up and said, I know I didn't have approval to do these things on the common property, but I think it looks pretty good. And I think that I should be allowed to keep it there. Everybody should be able to enjoy it. Now, it turns out his fellow owners, the Owners Corporation, the Strata Committee, were not so grateful for their new skate ramp. They ended up taking him to the tribunal and seeking an order that he restore the common property that he altered without approval. They actually sought a series of, I think, about 11 orders, but in summary, they were seeking orders that he removes these alterations to the common property and restores any damage to the common property, that he removes some rubbish and some items that he had stored on the common property, that if he didn't do these things, the Owners Corporation sought an order that they be allowed to access the lot and access the common property through the lot and remove those items and to recover their costs from him. They also sought orders that he stop breaching the Owners Corporation's bylaws, and they sought penalties for failures to comply with bylaw breach notices. So I'll come back to those in a minute. It's a particular strategy that this Owners Corporation took, seeking both orders for breach of the Act and orders for breaches of bylaws, and being able to essentially double up on the penalty in that respect. And finally, the Owners Corporation sought an order that the owner pays the Owners Corporation's costs of the legal proceedings. Now, this is what I love about these cases. Mr. Lewinson, as well as arguing, it looks great, everyone can use it if they want to, I've really improved the area, Mr. Lewinson said that he shouldn't have to remove the skate ramp because everybody knew he was building it. They could see it. They walked past it while it was in construction. It wasn't as if he was doing a renovation inside his apartment that nobody knew about until it was done. Everyone could see he was building the skate ramp. They were looking at it. They didn't do anything about it. So they lost their chance, was the argument that this owner was attempting to make. The tribunal said, a few things. Started with, the fact that some owners or all owners knew that the work was being performed is irrelevant to the obligation that an owner has under the legislation to seek approval for this type of major work. The tribunal also said it doesn't matter that the owner might have been motivated by altruism, might have said, hey, I've got the skills to build something nice. It's going to be good for everyone. I'm going to go and do it. Tribunal says it doesn't matter how genuine an owner is, that they think they're improving the common property for everybody, especially during a difficult time, COVID-19 lockdown. It doesn't excuse a failure to comply with the relevant provisions of the Strata law. The alterations that were made to the courtyard, the tribunal said, were significant. They weren't cosmetic work, so they weren't the kind of work which under Section 109 of our New South Wales legislation you don't need to get approval for. They weren't even minor renovations under Section 110, which the Owners Corporation could approve with an ordinary resolution, or the Strata Committee could approve if they had been delegated that authority. The tribunal said these alterations were clearly for the purpose of improving or enhancing the common property. And once we're doing that, we're improving or enhancing the common property by Mr. Lewinson's own admission. Remember, he said, I'm making it better for everybody. Once you are doing work that improves or enhances the common property, that triggers Section 108 of the Strata Schemes Management Act in New South Wales. And that means you need a special resolution at a general meeting to be able to approve this work. There was no special resolution at a general meeting for the famous skate ramp. So ultimately, the tribunal ordered Mr. Lewinson to remove the skate ramp. He had a couple of months from the date the decision came out to the date that he had to comply with that order. He had to also remove a rear deck that he had built in that area, remove garden beds and rubbish and debris, and restore the area to a clean and tidy condition. Now, you might remember I said earlier that the Owners Corporation had also issued bylaw breach notices to comply, we call them. And where bylaws are being breached and a notice to comply has been issued by an Owners Corporation, if there is no compliance with that notice, then the Owners Corporation can go to the tribunal and seek a penalty order. So in addition to orders to actually do work to remove all these additions and to reinstate any damage to the common property, Mr. Lewinson was ultimately also ordered to pay a penalty, to pay money to the Owners Corporation. I think all up, he had to pay about $550 payable to the Owners Corporation within 28 days. And I say that's, from an Owners Corporation perspective, can be a clever way to put a lot of pressure on an owner who may not be understanding their legal obligations, who may feel that they can just go through the tribunal process, and ultimately, if the tribunal orders me to take this stuff out, to fix it, I'll remove it. But where owners are facing financial consequences, a penalty order, even a cost order, then there can be a bit more pressure on them there to pay attention to the proceedings and to get a fuller understanding of what it is that they're doing wrong and what the risks might be if they don't comply. There is nothing preventing an Owners Corporation from bringing both an application for orders that an owner does something, removes illegal work, for example, repairs common property, and together with an application that an owner pays a penalty for a breach of the bylaws. But you do have to identify a bylaw that's being breached. I think in this case, there was a bylaw about damage to common property. There was also a bylaw about leaving rubbish and other items on common property. And the Owners Corporation said those were the bylaws that were being breached and ultimately received that penalty order. On this point about structures, about frog ponds, about items that may be built, back decks, skate ramps, pergolas, sheds that might be built within a lot's airspace, but impacting the common property, impacting the external appearance of the building, major work that also needs approval of the owners corporation. Another place that I've had some success for buildings in tackling these issues is looking at the requirements of the local council. Because where we're making these kinds of additions, especially where they impact the external appearance of the building, it's very likely that local council approval is required, and that it may not be exempt development, or it might be the kind of development that needs a complying development certificate, might need a development approval. If that hasn't happened, and by looking at council's planning instruments, by perhaps having a chat to council, that that is necessary, the council can often be a far more effective, cost effective, quick avenue via which to tackle these issues. If you let the council know that this is a problem, council can quite swiftly issue an order to the owner of a property requiring them to remove illegally installed, constructed structures. Those of you who are tuning in, who are turning up here, you know how difficult the tribunal process can be, how long and drawn out and expensive it can be. If there is ever a shortcut, then it's important to have a think about whether that one is worth taking. And I think when we're talking about illegal structures and illegal work, council should always be there on your list of options. Whenever I say that, whether I say it on webinars, I say it to Strata managers, I say it on platforms like this, I inevitably get the person who says, be careful about tipping off council if your building is not otherwise compliant in all respects with all of council's requirements. If you've got fire safety issues, you don't want to trigger an inspection and an audit of all of those issues and perhaps expose the buildings to an unnecessary fire order. Absolutely. Think about all of that if you're going to be getting your council involved and having officers come out on site to have a look at one-off issues that you might be having with resident structures, let's say. But that is an avenue that I think does often get forgotten in a lot of different respects. I found local councils helpful. The records that they hold, very helpful. It's come up in our member forum just this week. I'm also working with a client at the moment. We're doing a lot of work trying to, and so far successfully, getting a number of documents from council to understand what the original layout of the building looked like, what work might have been done to a building since, what original bylaws might have been. All of that, councils can be quite helpful. In my experience, quite helpful in providing that kind of information. So don't forget that they're there as a resource. All right. So I've talked about work that has been done, and the Lewinson case is a good example. I do suggest you go and have a read of it, of an owners corporation really digging in and saying, we want this structure removed. It's all been done. Yes, we didn't do anything during the course of that work to stop it, but it's not legal. No approval has been sought or given. We want this work to be removed. And they've been successful in that and successful in getting their penalty orders. Sometimes we think, and I've fallen into this trap as well, we think that where work is done, the tribunal's not really going to interfere with that. And it's a pain to have everything ripped out, removed. It's unlikely that the tribunal is going to make an order that happen. And that can be a reason for owners corporations not to be approaching the tribunal for orders once work has been complete. It can also be a reason for owners to go ahead and do work without first seeking approval and thinking, I will ask for permission. I will ask for forgiveness rather than asking for permission. And sometimes that works, but this Lewinson case is a good example of where that hasn't worked. So, and when I have gone searching for these cases, it's a case that I focus on in one of the training sessions that I do for our strata managers. When I've gone searching for similar cases, there's a lot of them. There's a lot. The tribunal does make orders that illegal, unapproved work be removed, that affected common property be reinstated. So where there are owners, perhaps with a level of confidence that they can just start their work, do it, get it done, and get away with it, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes an owner's corporation becomes aware of work being done without approval when that work is halfway through or it has just started. The jackhammering has just started. The contractors are coming and going with the flooring from the apartment. It becomes clear to somebody, often a committee member who's on site and thinks, hang on a second, what's going on here? That work is being done and it's known that there is no approval for that work and that approval is needed. Now, that is precisely what happened in the Price case. And that's a case, I think we've got the link for that one. Yes, Strata Plan number 5319 and Price. There's a few decisions in that case, but the one that I'm talking about today is a decision from January 2019. It's the first of a series. So again, the case buffs here might want to head off and read some more about the Price case. But that is a case where Ms. Price was seeking approval for her major renovation work, but she got a little bit fed up with the length of time that it was taking for the owners corporation to approve her application. So she started to do her work anyway. And it was major work. It was involving kitchen, bathroom renovation, the removal of an internal wall. Got sick of waiting for the owners corporation, so commenced her work without approval. Now, this owners corporation had some committee members on site who were on the ball. They realized what was happening and they were able to go to the tribunal and seek an urgent interim order that the work cease. Now, this is the kind of situation where you are likely to be successful in obtaining an interim order. It's almost something that will happen without even the tribunal hearing from either of the parties. If there's an application made where there is evidence that work has commenced, there is no evidence that there's any approval for this work, then the tribunal is going to preserve the status quo and make that interim order to say everything has to stop until we have a chance to have a full hearing of all of these issues. The tribunal sees that there's no downside, no prejudice, we might say, as lawyers, to the owner in just pausing everything for now. There is there would be serious consequences if the work continued, if Ms. Price was able to finish her wall removal, to finish her bathroom renovation, and if it all had to come back out again, then that would be a significant cost. So the tribunal sees it as an easy order to make, an interim order to stop work. So where you do, if you're a committee member on site and you're seeing this kind of work happening without approval, it's really important to move quickly to have that work stopped by interim order where you can. Of course, you would ask the owner, first of all, hang on a sec, did you realize you need approval for that? And where that's going to fall on deaf ears, then seeking that urgent interim order is the way to go. The Price case didn't end there, however. So what ultimately happened was that the interim order was made, work had to stop, and Ms. Price had to go and seek approval. She had to wait to get the approval that she'd already applied for, and then if that approval was forthcoming, then she'd be able to continue. But the problem was that she didn't get the approval. So the owners corporation approved part of the work, but it didn't approve another part of the work. And so she ultimately wasn't able to continue with part of her renovation work. The tribunal made an order that that part of the work that was not approved could not continue. But what it did was it put a pause on that order for a period of time. We call it a stay. That order was stayed. It was paused for a period of time. And that period of time was to give Ms. Price the opportunity to have a bylaw considered. So if there was a bylaw passed and made that approved this major work, and I think it was the removal of the wall that was the issue. If there was a bylaw passed and made that approved the removal of the wall, then that could continue. But in the meantime, the work was otherwise illegal. And if that bylaw didn't pass, then Miss Price was not able to continue with her work, and she had to continue. She had to patch it all up and live with it the way that it was. The tribunal will often do that where work is partly underway and it's major renovation work and there's been no approval. The tribunal will, in my experience, give the parties, an owners corporation and an owner, an opportunity to wind back the clock and retrospectively approve the work by way of a bylaw. So when I, acting for owners, have owners coming to me saying, oops, Amanda, I didn't know, and I'm halfway through my bathroom renovation, and I've been told I have to stop. What do I do? The first thing I'm saying is get that bylaw done and put before the owners corporation seeking that approval, because that is a way to cure this misunderstanding and to make sure that everything is ticked off as it should be. And I'm always putting, as I've no doubt said to you before, as a lawyer, I'm putting on the hat of the tribunal and thinking, what would the tribunal do in this situation? And in my experience, the tribunal would do the same thing, would give that owner the opportunity to go and put a bylaw forward and to see if that bylaw was made. And that's what happened in the Price case. The plot thickens with the Price case because ultimately that bylaw was refused, and Ms. Price brought proceedings against the owners corporation on the basis that that bylaw was unreasonably refused. So the work was paused for even longer, while there was then a separate argument about whether the owners corporation's decision to refuse permission under the bylaw and refuse to make the bylaw, whether the owners corporation was being unreasonable in that respect. So happy community there in that building, maybe, perhaps not. But it's so important to understand, A, when you need approval, B, that if work is done and completed without approval, the tribunal absolutely can and does regularly make orders that work stop, that work that's been done come out, and that common property be reinstated. But it's also going to give owners, if they ask for it, and owners are getting clever, they're asking for these things, they're listening to this guidance that I'm putting out there, and they're saying, oops, sorry, I want a retrospective, put forward a bylaw to get retrospective approval for this work. The tribunal is very likely to give the owner that opportunity and to adjourn the proceedings or make an order that is stayed, that is paused, until the owners corporation and the owner have a chance to go and pursue that resolution. The fun and games that we have in Strata. I'm going to head over to those comments. I've seen John Canning is at the keyboard. He's at the keyboard here today. Jealousy. I think that jealousy comment, that was the skate ramp. They didn't like the skate ramp. I think Mr. Lewis has said, hey, anyone can come and ride their skateboard on my skate ramp. It's fine. It's here for everybody. And restoring, yes. So in terms of orders, where orders are made to restore common property, and this is something that I would encourage owners corporations who are seeking these kinds of orders where there's been illegal work, it's so important to frame the order in such a way that the common property be reinstated. Because you can imagine, John's saying, was it messy? Look, by the time you rip out a skate ramp and a deck and the garden beds and the landscaping that was done, I'm sure it was messy. Make sure the order is broad enough to cover reinstatement as well, that it should be back to the way that it was previously. I've been involved in a case before where there was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work that was done. In that case, the owners thought that it was pursuant to a bylaw. The tribunal found differently. There was an order that all be pulled out, and it all be reinstated back to the condition that it was in. Not sure exactly how you do that. That was ultimately a case that went through a few levels of appeal and was settled, but these orders are made notwithstanding the expense, the extent of work that's done. Steve is saying, if there were extenuating circumstances such as a dysfunctional and biased OC or SC, could Ms. Price have put her case to NCAT and have them approve retrospectively, bypass the negative bias of the OC? Maybe another section of the Act. Yes. So Steve, you might have posted that before I got to it, but there is a section, I haven't said this yet, but there is a section in our legislation, section 149 in New South Wales, where an owners corporation unreasonably refuses to make a bylaw. Then under section 149, an owner can approach the tribunal and ask the tribunal to make that bylaw. It's a tough one, though. It's a tough one to have success with as an owner because we have High Court. We have some High Court authority on that one. I think from memory is the Ainsworth case. Not looking at New South Wales legislation, Queensland legislation, that pretty much tells us any kind of reason, any kind of mildly plausible reason that an owners corporation might come up with for refusing to pass a bylaw is probably going to be reason enough. So when I'm acting for owners who are putting forward bylaws seeking approval for renovation work, again, I'm always thinking about this bylaw has to be as comprehensive as possible. It has to cover all sorts of objections that an owners corporation or a strata committee might come up with, because if this bylaw is not passed, I want to be able to say to my client, that's unreasonable. We're now going to go to the tribunal and show the tribunal this bylaw and say, what was wrong with it? Nothing was wrong with it. Everything was going to be insured. We were taking responsibility for repair and maintenance. We were going to pay for an exclusive use of common property. Whatever it is that you think might need to tick that box of being so reasonable it could never possibly be unreasonable because you think there's going to be pushback, then that's really important to incorporate into your bylaw, always with that end in mind that you might be before the tribunal. So I hope that answers your question, Steve, that would have been the avenue, and indeed was the avenue that Miss Price ended up going down. Cheryl's saying, I'll be looking closely at the Lewinson case. Yes. Have you got a skate ramp in the backyard there, Cheryl, perhaps? Bill and Ben saying, Reno approval somewhat makes a joke of the temporal requirement of getting approval first, only if a special resolution has first been passed. Yeah. Retro approval. Sorry, Bill and Ben, I misspoke. Retro approval. Yeah, it does. And that's where I think this thought, this culture, perhaps this strategy of let's ask for forgiveness rather than asking for permission, where it might come from with owners. Because it is a process you can go down. That was the Price case. It's a process you can go down to not seek approval, do the work, say, oops, I'm sorry. Here's a retrospective bylaw that covers everything I think you could possibly ever object to. That doesn't get passed. Then you seek an order that the bylaw has been unreasonably refused. Tribunal can then make the bylaw. That's an important point, actually. To be clear, you don't even have to go back to a meeting. Once the tribunal says, unreasonably refused, the tribunal makes the bylaw. The order gets registered on the title as if it was the bylaw. Don't have to go back to a meeting to get that approved. So while they're hard to get, yeah, that process is there, and it is followed by some. John is going to get some skateboarding done in the meantime. Excellent. If the approval is going to be a pain in the backside and could take years, we'll get some skateboarding done in the meantime. I like it. Well, I have been very happy to bring you both our French Pond frogs case and our skate ramp case and others that have flowed from that discussion. The links are here for you in the notes if you want to go and check those out. We have our member case spreadsheet that the team is keeping updated. You might have heard me, it's probably weeks ago now, release that resource to the members who are inside our online community. Whenever I'm talking about cases here on live, on the podcast, we're popping those cases into our member spreadsheet. They're sorted by topic area and the date and the platform on which we discussed the case, so that our members have that ready reference there for them. If you're encountering a skate ramp problem or a frog pond problem and you think, oh, light bulb, I think there's a case on that, Amanda talked about it on live, then our members can head over and check out that spreadsheet. If you are inside our online membership community, you're not sure where to find that spreadsheet, let me know and the team will shoot a link to you. If you want to get access to that kind of spreadsheet and you want to join us inside the Your Strata Property online membership community, the place to go to be doing that is stratamembership.com. Love to have you in there with us. All right, John's given me links to frog calls. That's one way to spend the weekend checking that out. Bill and Ben, give me a link to the koalas, please. Cheryl saying thanks again. Have a great weekend. Lovely to have you all with me here today. That is a wrap on our Friday Live. Go and enjoy your weekends in Strata, and I will catch you all here next time. Bye for now.